Marinaro, the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal Talk, and we're here. And of course, we're going to go look back on Lionel Messi's win with Inter Miami, and we're going to talk about that in the U.S. Open Cup semis. They are going to the final, which will be played in Fort Lauderdale on Wednesday, September 27th. Earlier today at practice, we had a chance to hear from Jules-Anthony Vilsaint, who talked about his performance. We had a chance to talk to the coach, who was asked about Jules-Anthony and where he stands on the team and why it took so long for him to play his first game. Nick DeSantis had a chance to see Sean Rea and Alvarez play a game with the reserves last week. I'm definitely going to ask him his thoughts on that. And we're going to go to Toronto, where Toronto FC talks are heating up, so they say, with John Herdman, who's the head coach of the Canadiens men's national team. Is Herdman going to Toronto? Yes or no? We'll see if Nick knows anything. We'll see if Jeremy's heard anything. It's the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal Talk. I'm Marinaro. It's coming up.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. CF Montreal Talk.
Here's the chance. They've got the goal. Absolutely incredible. Cameron Porter delivers the goal to send Montreal Impact into the CONCACAF Champions League semi-final.
The sickest CF Montreal podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Gentlemen, it's good to talk with you guys again. Without further ado, from 98.5 FM and IMFC Radio, Jeremy Filosa, and former Montreal Impact player, coach, sporting director, head of international business relations, everything. He did everything. Nick DeSantis, how you doing, guys?
Very good, thank you.
All right. I had a chance to talk about Jules-Anthony Vilsaint along with Sofiane Benzaza and Nilton George. That was a couple of days ago for the benefit of those who were watching and listening on Francais. Tonight is an English podcast, so I haven't heard you guys talk about him yet, so I'll send it to you. Jeremy, we'll start with you on Jules-Anthony Vilsaint's first professional start last Sunday in Toronto.
Well, listen, I haven't been this excited about a young forward on the team since Kone, and Kone wasn't even a forward. He was a midfielder, but extremely excited. I just rewatched before the podcast. I rewatched again some of the highlights of, those 35, 37 minutes that he played. And, I find he has got so much potential. I mean, I know you talked about him at length.
No,
but for guys like me, the little amount of minutes that he's played this year, that's basically what we have to base ourselves on. And, it's so, it hits you right in the face in terms of, what he's able to do when he has the ball at his feet, the control I love one thing about him. I love the fact that if he sees a shooting lane, he's going to shoot. And nobody on this team does that. And not only is he going to shoot, he's going to find a way to put it on target and give his team a chance to win. This is not the first time he's done this. In the past also, when he's come in as a substitute. So I'm extremely excited. I just hope that, they'll keep working with him and that we'll keep seeing him, game in and game out so that this kid can improve.
Nick, I saw you last on late Sunday afternoon at the CS St. Laurent semi-pro game. Of course, they were playing against the reserves. And then I would imagine you made your way home and you watched the game, the CF Montreal game. We'll talk about the reserves a little bit later on, but without further ado, Jules-Anthony Vilsaint, what did he show you?
Yeah, listen, again, we have to be careful because it's his first game. And I guess, when you look at the opposing team and the defenders he played against, but for me, it's great to see because it's a confidence builder. It's a real shame that he got injured. I don't know the extent of his injury. I hope it's not too long because, basically you try to build on something like that. And I think he had a very good game in terms of now the 37, 38 minutes he played. He put both center backs under a lot of pressure. They both had to deal with him, which left spaces even for others. But it's a good sign because in the end, what he did in 37 minutes, hopefully now, that gives him the confidence to believe in himself. It gives confidence to the coaching staff to say, we gave him these minutes and he came back to us with this. So that's the best thing about it, is that it gives confidence to everyone.
Yeah.
Now it's about finding more minutes, and finding consistency.
Nick, the injury doesn't seem to be bad at all, because the first practice back from Toronto, he was on the field and he was practicing with his teammates. The other 10 starters were doing a recovery session. He was on the field taking part in some of the drills in the small-sided game. The one thing that we did notice that he had a bandage over, his left knee, basically protecting or maybe compressing on the left calf muscle. But he was practicing all week, to the point where we're wondering if he's going to be ready to go to start on Saturday night versus New England.
Yeah, well, hopefully, if he is, I think that, he'll get another start for sure. Now it's a completely different team, New England, to a certain extent, because, if we talk about that game that night, it was embarrassing on Toronto's end. And I don't take anything away from the Montreal side, because it was of even Choiniere, and it's got to be the next captain of this team. He has all the tools to be a leader, because he leads by example. You see his personality now is starting to shine. You can play him anywhere on the field. So
if he's still here by that time, Nick, because let's not forget, Samuel Piet's going to be here for at least another couple of years.
Yeah, and again, I think, they have someone in the background already coming up, the same way Sam came up after a few years becoming team captain. When you start thinking that all of a sudden, there was the Patrice Berniers, the Mauro Biellos, you have Sam Piet, and you start thinking that your captain, right, and rightfully so, is always a local product, just enhances everything, because these local kids that have the ability to first and foremost perform, but then have that personality, that there's a lot of pride behind it. I know Mathieu very well, because he grew up in the academy, and he wants nothing best for the club, and that's a mentality that, Sam has shown, that Patrice, like all the local talent, that's always what they wanted first and foremost. And I think that, seeing Choiniere in the way he's playing and the personality that he's bringing out is quite impressive.
I think he needs to improve verbally, like when he expresses himself. I don't know how he is in the dressing room with the media. He's still very shy. It's still, any question we ask him, the answers are very short, not much like information around it. I think that's the only thing that he's missing.
In terms of personality, I think Saliba has it more than Choiniere in terms of personality with the media, that is.
Yeah, but in the end, for me, the most important thing is the field. And, of course, I still think he's a little timid, and he's going to get more and more comfortable with the media. He's a type of person, too, that doesn't want to showcase himself. He wants to showcase himself on the field and not off the field. And I think that's a good trait, because others see it as well. Because that within a group all the time, at times, people from outside will say, it's always the local guys on TV and all of that. But I think it's extremely important, and I think he would be a great ambassador for this club going forward.
All right, guys, look, I know I said it in French a couple of days ago, but I'm going to say it again. I've seen Jules Anthony Vilsain play hundreds of games. I've seen him ever since he was 9 years old. So playing here until age 17. And what can I tell you? I've already said what I had to say. For me, out of all the game changers that I've seen playing out of Quebec soccer, Jean-Yves Ballou-Tabla, Jules Anthony Vilsain, and Ishmael Kone were the three that I think were in a different category than everyone else, that stood out above everyone else. We know that Kone was transferred for over 8 million euros. And I believe that if Jules Anthony Vilsain won't be transferred for more than that, he will be very, very close to that. Of course, we're not talking about tomorrow, but I think if he plays with regularity by the end of not this season, but next season, at that point, there's going to be a big offer that's going to come in, and he'll be
so
gone.
also. I think so also. Just to tell you, this morning he had no more bandage, so that's the good news. He said he's ready to go for Saturday. Not a problem.
I think you asked him a question. Why don't we bring up a clip, Jeremy?
Yeah, sure.
Regardez tes matchs jusqu'à maintenant, le peu de minutes que tu as joué, je pense que c'est assez clair qu'il y a un niveau de qualité là que pas tout le monde peut déclarer d'avoir. Qu'est-ce qui, selon toi, a fait en sorte que ça a pris tout ce temps-là pour qu'Hernan dise « OK, c'est bon, c'est le temps maintenant pour un premier départ », parce qu'il nous avait dit il y a de ça 1 mois et demi qu'il sentait que tu n'étais pas encore prêt. Qu'est-ce qui s'est passé depuis ce temps-là?
Juste plus grind dans les entraînements, avoir cette mentalité d'un dog, plus dire, me donner à fond. En fait, la manière dont moi je vois, c'est ils attendaient le bon moment. Puis, comme la plupart du monde peut le voir, ça marche un peu. Donc, content qu'il m'a fait souffrir un petit peu. Puis ça a changé ma mentalité. Donc.
All right. You asked them what changed for you to get into the lineup, because about a month and a half ago, the coach told us he didn't think you were ready. And now, obviously, you got your start and you played the way you played. And he said, well, my mentality changed. I went with a dog mentality. I went with a grind mentality. I was grinding a lot more in the practices. You know what? In a way, I'm happy that the coach made me suffer as much as he did, because it really got me in another mindset to grind even more at practice and show him what I can do. And there you saw the result. Nick, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that, if he hasn't played, then when he mentions things like that, when I even think Losada, Argentinian background, and the way the mentality of an Argentinian is, it's about work. It's about having the knife between your teeth. And I think that game there, he showed that. He was in the game. He was moving around. He was causing a lot of problems. Now I don't know what his mentality or his habits are in practice, but I think that at times, sometimes young players, you just got to make sure you give them some time as well, because the last thing you want is to put them in the worst conditions to succeed. And at times it takes time, and you just got to be patient. And that's where young players have to understand that every day, if they're not getting minutes in a game, the practices have to be the game. That's a final for you. And if that mindset is, well, the coach doesn't believe in me and the others don't work hard, it's the wrong mindset, and you're not going to succeed. And I think that's extremely important. And hopefully he realized that with what he's been saying. And hopefully it makes him understand. It's the same way when I think of Mathieu Choiniere years back, that trained and never got a sniff, but he was working every day, whether it's the reserves, whether it's the first team. Every day you need to prove yourself.
All right. So you know what? I was going to go to Victor Wanyama, Jeremy, but Nick just brought up the reserves. Yeah. Once again, I saw him last week on Sunday at the game of the reserves. We know that Alvarez was sent down to play a game with the reserves, and Sean Rea was sent down to play a game with the reserves. Nick is sitting in the row behind me with the assistant coach of the Canadians men's national team, Mauro Biello, who has coached a fair share of youth teams as well. And Nick, you saw Sean Rea. I'd love to get your opinion, but he looked like a guy, a young man, who was rattled to be there. You correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, this is what the body language showed me. Your thoughts of what you saw?
Yeah, it's disappointing. Now, again, I don't know the inside of what's going on, but it's disappointing to see a young player when he's sent down, because like you just said, you never know who's in the stands, whether it's a national team coach, whether it's a scout, whether it's an agent, you never know. And in the end, you have to understand that for me, a young player that's a first team player and goes down, with all the disappointments and all the frustrations, the mentality has to be that you need to go down and make a difference. You make a difference so that you show people you don't belong here, you belong upstairs. But if you go and watch this game and you watch Sean and with others, there was no comparison really. So in the end, you could be frustrated and disappointed, drain your energies on things you can control. And what you can control is your performance, is your training habits, is everything about you. You cannot control if the coach decides to bring you down or the club brings you down. So that's a mindset that, we just spoke about Vilsaint, and I think it was disappointing. It was disappointing because I saw Sean a couple of games in different moments with the first team. And, you start looking at, what does Bryce Duke as well bring to the table? They're not very different. They're not very different in terms of quality, in terms of how they move, where they want the ball. So for me, it was disappointing because you watch that game and you see to yourself, oh boy, at this level, with all due respect, he's not making a difference. So then you question his mindset.
Yeah, but there's a lot of players that go. Look, I'm going to tell you this. There were a couple of players from the pro team, Nick, that went down last year to play a couple of games. They were so disappointed to be set down to play with that team in that league. They refused to be in the same dressing room as the team. They wanted to train. They wanted to change in their own dressing room at the training center because we're CF Montreal players.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's a bit ridiculous.
But
then again, Tony, we
happened.
Talk about,
and with players,
when you say things like that, it's funny because, the message has been that, it's about developing local talent, which is great because that's a new philosophy. But then you have to question, are these local talented players put in the best conditions for them to succeed, to get to the next level? And that's a question that we have to ask ourselves. Because in the end,
that's an answer that everybody knows, Nick. The answer is no. They're playing in the PLSQ. I mean, with all due respect to the players who play in the league,
guys,
and my son played in the league, so I have a lot of respect for them. But most of them go to school and either train 2 to 3 times a week, or they train 2 to 3 times a week, and they have a job and they work.
But guys,
and a lot of them aren't in shape. They have no cardio.
If I'm the boss of this team, if I'm the Nick DeSantis of this team, and I say to myself, we got this guy, Sean Rea, to play 2 years in CPL. He was one of the best young players in that league. Now he comes here. He starts the season as a starter. Some games he's a sub, and he's doing okay. It seems like, he's able to hold his own. Some games a bit better than others, whatever. Now all of a sudden, there's one little, accrochage, you can call it as you want, with the coach, and now he's starting in the PLSQ. But between me and you, like if I'm Nick DeSantis of this organization, I go sit down with my coach, I go sit down with my player, and I say, what's going on here? What's going on? Because it's not true that this player was good enough to start 3 months ago, and now he can't even be dressed on the team. He's got to play with the PLSQ. This doesn't make sense, guys.
Yeah, but I'm sure that those discussions were had. I think Olivier has enough experience and understanding. And maybe it was to the point where that's what needs to be done. We don't know everything that goes on inside, but guys, you got to give them a bit of, respect in terms of these are people that have been at those levels, at high levels. And sometimes this is what certain players need.
Nick, if this guy's down on himself that bad, okay, they're not doing a good job. They're not surrounding him properly. They're not passing the right message, because this is not the Sean Rea that we know. This is not the Sean Rea that the personality of Sean Rea that we heard of.
I know, Jeremy.
Yeah,
what can Sean Rea control over that? What's the only thing he can control?
The field.
Is the field and his performances.
I understand.
So in the end, he's a professional soccer player. That's his future. That's what
I
he
understand.
wants to do.
But Nick, as an organization, for me, if this guy's not in the right state of mind, I got to try to find a way to get him in that right state of mind.
I got a great question for you, Nick DeSantis. Anytime you see an offensive player play on that reserve team, how many opportunities do they get per game? How well or not does that team play?
Yeah, so that's another question mark, is that in the end, when you think of these young players, all right, and you say to yourself, okay, they're playing in the PLSQ. I'll try to remember the game I saw Sunday night, and then in a year's time, ask yourself, have these players made progression? That's first and foremost the most important thing. And in the end, to me, I think that you need to have qualified coaches enough to give these kids, these players, exact and clarified information on what's needed on the field. To me, it doesn't seem that there's an identity or an understanding of what needs to be done on the field, because you're not playing against world beaters. There's a lot of spaces on the field, because even when you look at a Saint Laurent, right, which have at the semi-pro level are one of the best teams. These are guys that train 3-4 times a week, so that means they don't train every day, all right? Their fitness levels aren't the greatest, so even though a team like that...
You have a couple of players who take 3 weeks vacation during the season.
After 20, 30 minutes, you know that the spaces start expanding. So all of a sudden now, if you're smart enough as a team and you have certain clear ideas of how you're going to exploit teams, right, then that has to come into effect.
Perfect. So listen to what you just said, Nick, okay? You just said that all of a sudden, right, because of players who probably are not training at 1,000%, neither in terms of quantity or in terms of quality or in terms of engagement, that there are spaces that open up on the field. So the play is not realistic as to what these players will find when they go to another level.
100%.
So when you ask the question, are they putting their players in the best conditions possible? For several reasons, no. And one of them is that these spaces, this is not realistic to any other league that you would find that's obviously more competitive, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Guys, we already know that this organization is an organization that accepts to do things at the lowest possible level, lowest possible payroll, lowest possible value of franchise, lowest possible investments in terms of purchasing players, lowest possible investments in the academy, the reserve, or whatever team. So this is the standard. That's all.
And here's the deal. Here's the deal. If things remain the way they are, and some of the people that work within the academy or the reserve team stay there, and the league is still that league, and it's set up the way it's set up, the longer you're there, the more you regress.
I agree.
And there's a player, and I, he's a great kid, so I don't even want to bring up his name. But there's a player who was a pretty important player on that team the last couple of years that every time I see him, I find he dips 5 to 10%. Every time I see him. That's a big dip if you've seen the player 10, 12, 11, 12 over the last year. Like every time I see him, it dips. Now, in his case, chances are he's going to end up going to a CPL team because, his agent's got a direct line and he does business with 2 clubs in particular. But it's still, if you're there, you can't stay long because the more you're there, and mind you, I also feel that, on that team, there's already 2 guys that are identified. It's predetermined who will be in the show in the next 2 years. And the other players that are on the team, they and the academy basically use each other. The academy uses them because they need numbers on that team, and they use the academy so they can train 5 days a week. There's a lack of motivation. It's not good. It's not.
Yeah,
good.
No, it's not good. We already know that. Nick, what do you think of Alvarez?
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
So it's my first time I see him. Benefit of the doubt, but what I saw on that particular day, not very good. First and foremost, as a center back body type, especially in MLS, doesn't seem that he has the profile of a fast, strong center back. With his feet, whenever he was put under pressure, he suffered. But again, it's first game, first time I ever see him. But, from what I've seen and in terms of the monies they paid for him, you're going to have to really watch him a lot more. Now, is he demotivated? Is he in a world where he's like, I can't believe I'm at this level? But then you have to show certain things. I think that the forwards on the Saint Laurent team exposed them at times.
Kwame exposed everybody.
Yeah, so he suffered, and I thought it was a difficult game for him. I'd like to see him more so that, you get a better feel. He was in Mexico in a professional club there. I think he was with the U20 Colombian national team.
He was, yes, yeah.
And
the club team he was with in Mexico was Pachuca.
Well, okay. Listen, Hernan Lozada, when I asked him the question directly last week, he said this kid's not ready to play in the MLS. So
no,
that's clear.
Yeah. And that's the perfect kid though, that needs an MLS Next Pro.
Absolutely.
That kid needs an MLS Next Pro. And once again, here's the thing, okay? You send players down, but and once again, like Nick, okay, I don't like judging players on one game. And as a matter of fact, one of the things I prefer doing is actually judging a player by great things that he does than a player having a bad game, because anyone can have a bad game, but there's only so many players that can do great things to a certain level, okay? But if you judge the one game, Jeremy, if that's $1 million player, then I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what to tell you, and I think Nick is.
Well, right now we're gonna have to give them the benefit of the doubt, and we'll give him the time that he needs. If he's not ready to play this year, well, that's what it is. The problem is when you go in a press conference and you say, "Yeah, we let go of Camacho, but we brought this guy in," but this guy can't play right now. So I don't know what one has to do with the other.
Well, I think they're probably confident in the other guys they have as well. But for me, when you talk about putting him in the best conditions, playing in the MLS2, it's not only like I haven't seen MLS2 and I haven't seen the level, and maybe it's a bit higher than PLSQ. The difference is that it gives you a measuring stick. It gives you a measuring stick because you're all on the same playing field.
Correct.
So you're playing against each other, and it gives you a better indication because maybe, Dallas, 3 of those kids that are playing in MLS2, you see them on the first team, and you played against Dallas and says, man, we did well against those guys. So it gives you a better measuring stick than going to watch Sunday's game, the PLSQ level, with all due respect, and saying, oh my God, this is the level, and he had a hard time at that level. Yeah. So it's more in regards even to give you a better measuring stick where they're at.
And you're going up against pro players who are traveling like pros and eating like pros and training like pros and recovering like pros. And that's the biggest difference right there. Jeremy Wanyama, I know with each passing game that he doesn't play, and it's Piet and Saliba as CDMs, that this is not good for Victor Wanyama.
It's not good because for many different reasons. So first of all, from what we're understanding is the coach has told Wanyama that he's not going to be starting back-to-back games anymore. So he hasn't started in a while now. He looks like he wants to keep him as a rotation player. I was extremely surprised not to see him come in late in that game against Toronto because the ship was taking water, and a guy like Wanyama could certainly settle things down. I don't understand how he didn't come in that game, but this goes to show for me how bad the relationship has gotten, because if Wanyama's not coming in, even at that moment, we have a problem, guys. We have a problem. And now we have a player who's your only DP, who's making 1.5 this year and 1.8 next year guaranteed, with a coach that apparently doesn't see him in his plans. And I can't blame the coach, because the way that they want to play with the transition game and the speed, Wanyama can't do that. So
don't forget, Jeremy, he probably has a sporting director behind him too, saying, I'm not going to tell you who to play, but I mean, the philosophy of this club is to try and play some young players and try to increase their value.
So why are you bringing this guy back?
Nathan Saliba's value has doubled on the transfer market since the beginning of the season.
I understand, but Losada knew who Wanyama was last winter. It was not a secret. So when they had this conversation, why do they re-sign this guy? Because with that 1.5, 1.8 million, they probably could have gotten another CDM at 500,000-600,000 and put that million somewhere else. I don't get it, guys, because if this guy's not going to be playing, I mean, with a team that has a budget of $9 million, when you have a guy making 1.5 or 1.8 not playing, it's a big problem. It's a big problem. And Wanyama's not going to be able to find anybody that's going to pick him up at that contract. So I don't know what's going to happen in the offseason, but this is going to be a problem.
Saudi Arabia. Nick?
Maybe.
Saudi Arabia for Wanyama?
Well, I was kidding, right? He makes pretty big money. Jeremy says, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. Saudi Arabia?
It's pretty interesting what's going on, especially now that it's not only older players, it's young players too. I'm saying Gabri Vega, that Napoli was going after,
Yeah.
1-year-old apparently is signing in Saudi Arabia. So, you start questioning, where is it going?
But Jeremy and Nick, I think what's happening is you said the coach knew who Wanyama is. Why did he say yes to him? Jeremy, I don't think the coach said yes to him. I think the sporting director looked and said, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to play in this formation. I want to insert X amount of young players so that we can go with our philosophy, but I need to insulate them. And I think the sporting director made the decision to bring Wanyama back so that he can insulate some young players and so that they could be young, but at the same time, semi-competitive because they have a mix of veteran players. I could be wrong. I could be way off. But I think whether the coach wanted him or he didn't, it was given to him. That's it. He's on your team.
Yeah, but it could be both, Tony, because in the end, if the coach is saying, well, we're not going to spend more money and I'm going to need an experienced player, might as well keep him. It's an important position, so they came down to that decision together. It could be that too. I don't think anyone forced anyone on anybody. I at least I don't think so. But yeah.
Before we get to Lionel Messi, go ahead, Jeremy.
But this summer, had they moved Victor Wanyama out and kept Camacho and maybe gave him an extension, I think that would have made more sense. I really don't understand where they're going with this now. There was a rumor that Wanyama was being shopped, that possibly they were talking to New England in June, and maybe some of that was true. Now, with the information that we have now, with the player no longer starting, no longer even playing, maybe there was some truth to that story. But it's not good for anybody because he was your captain up until a couple of weeks ago. He was the guy that you lean on to bring those young players, to give them that experience, to be the big brother. Is he going to want to do that now if he's not playing anymore? Is he going to feel humiliated? I don't know, but it's not a situation I would want to be in.
He doesn't look like a happy camper, and maybe he is, but he doesn't look like it. And who can blame him? All right, okay. Before we get to Lionel Messi and Inter Miami, and of course we get to John Herdman and rumors of him accepting the head coaching job with Toronto FC. I want to get back to Jules Anthony Vilsaint for just a second because Jeremy, you were there earlier this morning at the Neutral A Center. You asked that question to Jules Anthony Vilsaint, and a question was asked to head coach Hernan Losada about Vilsaint. Let's listen in.
C'est assez évident en regardant ce jeune-là jouer qu'il y a un talent que pas tout le monde a. Ça vous a pris un bon petit bout de temps avant d'avoir la confiance de lui donner le départ. Qu'est-ce que vous avez vu de lui différemment depuis quelques semaines qui vous a dit il est prêt et comment vous appréciez sa touche de balle et ce qui amène sur le terrain?
Oui. Pour commencer, j'ai un avantage par rapport à beaucoup de monde. Je suis présent dans tous les entraînements. Donc, il y a personne qui sait meilleur que moi et que tout le staff qui est prêt pour jouer et qui n'est pas prêt pour jouer. Ça, c'est un. Deux, c'est aussi un joueur qui il a manqué la préparation. Il était blessé au début de l'année. Et physiquement, il était honnêtement pas prêt pour commencer un match. Oui, pour rentrer, et c'est ça qu'on a fait le dernier match. Je pense que aussi pour un joueur jeune qui joue avec une équipe professionnelle pour la première fois, c'est aussi important d'avancer petit à petit. Parce que des grands pas, comme il a passé aussi au début de saison avec certains joueurs, par exemple Nathan Saliba, je pense que c'est un bon exemple, qui est à la base des blessures, des joueurs qui n'étaient pas disponibles dans ce moment-là. You throw him a little bit to the Lions, il n'était pas prêt, et après tu as besoin de prendre lui deux pas à l'arrière pour avancer encore une fois. Et avec Nathan, il avait des succès, mais il y a des autres joueurs que peut-être ça ne va pas. Donc, c'est aussi important de ne pas brûler un joueur et de rester patient. Patient, c'est une chose que pour beaucoup de joueurs jeunes et pour beaucoup de monde, il n'y a pas. Dans le 2023, dans ce nouveau monde, il n'y a pas de patience. Et Jules, il était patient. Jules, il a bien travaillé, il a amélioré chaque semaine dans ses conditions physiques, au niveau mental, au niveau tactique aussi. Et c'est pour ça qu'il a mérité de commencer Toronto. Mais on ne va pas oublier, et pour moi, comme entraîneur-chef, c'est important aussi de ne mettre pas la pression sur les épaules d'un joueur qui est encore très très jeune, qu'il a commencé les premiers matchs le week-end passé, et que même dans ces matchs qu'il a commencé, il a joué 35 minutes.
All right. The coach says, you asked him why it took him so long before he could give him the vote of confidence. And he said, well, I have a benefit that a lot of people don't have. I'm at the practices every day, so I see what I see. Let's not forget that when he arrived here, he wasn't 100% healthy. He was a little bit hurt. So in terms of his preparation, he was behind everyone else. It took a while to catch up. Young players, you don't want to give them too much too soon, because then all of a sudden, if they get burned, then you got to bring them back a little bit to get them going. You saw that Nathan Saliba had a tough start to the season. Then it started to go better after that. And anyway, he goes, I don't want to put too much pressure on the kid. He played well, but even at that, he played 35 minutes. But
I asked him.
I thought it was very good what he said. Very well said. And
Yeah, I understand, but everything that he said, Nick, we already knew, right? I mean, we didn't learn anything there. But I did ask him, like,
what you learn, Jeremy, is that you don't know the insides, the everyday. And like he said, it was clear. I'm the only guy that sees him every day, every minute, and he's in a position to understand. For me, it was clear what he just said.
Very clear. Can I say it before you say it, and you tell me if you agree with me? He didn't think he practiced hard enough.
Probably, but he's saying the right things, and it's clear. It's exactly clear of saying, you know what? It's a young guy. He didn't do a training camp, right?
Yeah.
He's got qualities, but he has to understand what it takes at this level, more than just quality. There's mentality, there's physicality, there's all kinds of stuff. And they were patient with him day by day. And he complimented Jules as well, saying, you know what? He stuck to it. He stuck to it. And in the end, he merited his candy. He got it, and he did well. Great for him.
And the part of the question that I wanted to hear the most, what do you like about his play? What do you see in his play? The answer that I got zero. I got nothing. I got none of that.
I know what you're saying.
And you know what?
You were
and
waiting
you know what,
for the
Tony?
coach to compliment the player, and he didn't.
No, of course, I want him to tell me what he sees in this player. And right after that clip, I gave him a second chance. We don't have it here, but I asked him again. I came back and I said, please talk to me about the skill set, what you saw from this kid. Can you compare me to another player maybe that you know, that again, he didn't want to go there.
Played 37 minutes, and the coach doesn't want to put himself in a position to say all these things, and then it doesn't. Like I just said at the beginning, this is great because it gives confidence to the player, it gives confidence to the coach, but it's only normal now that now it needs to be consistent every time he gets minute. What can he bring to the table? And then you start seeing, Jules Anthony and what his qualities are.
Nick, I love the fact that we have the chance to talk to you, because obviously not only your experience as a former player and a former coach and a former sporting director, you see things a different way that, with all due respect, Jeremy and I, who are just plain simple members of the media, that we see. But I think what Jeremy is trying to get at, and I'm going to add to it, what we see is, and we understand everything you're saying, okay? What we see is, in the time that we've seen this kid, and we understand that he hasn't played 20 games and he hasn't played 70 minutes per game, but in times that we've seen the kid and we've seen the touch, the hunger for goal, the want to attack, the wanting to take guys one-on-one, the wanting to take shots on net, the wanting to create dangerous scoring opportunities. In the minutes that we've seen, I think it's obvious to everyone in the entire city, whether you watch the games or not, whether you know the games or not, that he has something that the other forwards on this team do not have, especially Ofer, especially Toy, especially Ibrahim. Opoku's got his qualities. Kyoto's got his qualities. This is a different breed. No?
Listen, Bill Sain had 4 shot attempts in his 35 minutes. Ofer had 0 in the 55 that he played. You know what I'm saying? Any of the answers you just gave, Tony, would have been good with me. I like the way he attacks the net. I like the way he wants to hold the ball. I like the way that, he takes shots and he's not scared. Nothing. It's as if he's scared to say something that's going to blow the kid's head up.
Well, maybe that too, Jeremy. There's nothing wrong with that. I think in the end, you want to protect your players, especially the young ones. You want to make sure that, like you said, because he can easily start thinking, he's a local kid. Everybody's filling his head with all kinds of stuff. You need to be playing and all that. And they need to be in a position to really try to manage all of that and say, hey, you know what? You came in, you did well. That's great. The next step is now let's get you more minutes. You come in, find consistency. Like, that's all part of it too.
Well, listen, Saliba's a local kid, and he's playing a lot better lately because he's more ready. And consequently, he started 6 of the last 8 games. So let's hope that this is a start of something for Jules Anthony Vilsaint, and he's going to play 6 of the last 8 games. All right,
I just want to say that I had a chance to talk to Nathan this week, earlier the week, and you could tell with the smile on his face that things are going well for him right now. He's so happy. He's so proud. And I don't think, it couldn't be more positive for everybody that knows the kid.
Jeremy, I told you this before.
Nice to see him.
In my opinion, he was the best player on that reserve team last year. That's my opinion. In my opinion, to tell you the truth, I don't even think it was close. Even though, there's, I don't even think it was close. All right. Okay. Lionel Messi, guys, Lionel Messi. We saw what we saw. They're down. You're wearing the pink shirt. They're down 2-0 yesterday in Cincinnati, and they're able to come back, even though you can tell that he is absolutely exhausted. Cincinnati did a great job of cutting down the lanes and cutting down the gaps and taking them away from Messi. But then again, in extra time, there you saw it. There's a beautiful cross to Campagna right on his head. Amazing. They end up pulling it off. They win the game in overtime already. Messi mania has hit Miami, guys, to the point where it's hit even Montreal, because I can tell you that the second that Houston won that game last night, Tony Marinaro went on the website. He bought 2 tickets, Montreal, Fort Lauderdale round trip. Then he bought tickets to watch Inter Miami versus New York City FC, which is going to be played 3 days after the U.S. Open Cup final on the Saturday, the 30th of September. And today, when the tickets went on sale for ticket members, the season tickets that went on sale at noon, but the queue opened up at 4 p.m. for non-season ticket members, I jumped on that as well, and I bought myself 2 tickets. So I'm going to die with no money, but I will have had a lot of fun.
Yeah, but you just sold your tickets for this weekend against the Red Bulls, so you made it up. At the end of the day, it's a wash.
So I did. So I had bought 4 tickets versus the Red Bulls for this weekend. I sold them, and with the money, instead of depositing it in the account, I went out and I turned it into a 6-day trip to Florida.
Perfect.
And a couple of games.
Listen, guys. I mean, we say about pulling a rabbit out of the hat. Yesterday, Messi pulled an elephant out of the hat because, you know what? Nothing was going right for Miami. They weren't doing anything. As soon as they got that free kick at the 68th minute, and it's around the box, and it's Messi, it's as if we already knew, okay, they're going to get one here. Let's see what they can do. And they did get one there with the ball served to Campana, who did a great job putting it at the back of the net. But again, guys, at the 97th minute, when you know that you're playing 98 minutes, it's as if, guys, he's looking at his watch and he's like, how long can I wait? How long can I wait to make it more dramatic? And he waits till the 97th minute and he places that ball perfectly from 30 yards out at the second post for Campana to score the second goal. And then after that, okay, they each score a goal in overtime and they win it in the PKs, but it's absolutely insane, guys. When Messi came to the MLS, I was expecting a hurricane. This is not a hurricane. This is a big bang. You understand? We're in another world here.
When I worked radio, and it was a long time ago, it was on a weekend. We were doing a show from a bar. I don't know if a pub. I don't know if Nick DeSantis remembers this, but I asked Nick DeSantis to come down and talk soccer. It was a competition that was going on. And I said to him, you can have any one young player in the world. Who would you have? His answer was Lionel Messi before because I think he had seen him with the under-17s or something like that. So, Nick, he's making you look good, Nick.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much. You're not a genius when you're saying you want Lionel Messi.
Yeah.
No,
but Nick, what he's doing is
Nick, with the mentality in North America, that was what it used to be, and it probably still is in some circles, with some coaches, with some institutions, with some schools, with some academies, with some teams. Lionel Messi would have been cut from a lot of academies in North America. And for me, because there are now some who are coming out saying that the worst thing that could happen to the MLS is that Lionel Messi's in it, because now he's making the league look bad, and because you know what, he's not even moving, and he's standing still, and he's taking the league, he's destroying everybody. I think the greatest thing that came out of this is that if Lionel Messi hasn't changed the opinions of all those who think you absolutely need to be big and strong and the fastest to become a soccer player, it all helps for sure. It all helps. Lionel Messi is one of the shortest players in the world.
Yep.
And he's the greatest player, arguably, ever. The Ballon d'Ors say that he is.
Listen, guys. If you look at just in the MLS over the last 5, 6, 7 years, Giovinco and Lucho Acosta, two guys that we've known very well here in North America, two of the smallest players ever to play in the league, and they were two of the best players in this league. But just to say, guys,
Morales.
Yeah. Yesterday, okay, my son called his buddies, and they were watching Lionel Messi at my house on the giant screen, Inter Miami versus Cincinnati, where never in a million years it would have happened a month ago. So I went to play my soccer game last night, guys, with my buddies. We're taking turns, right?
Stop.
No, but listen, we're taking turns on the bench. So we're passing the phone. Whoever goes on the bench takes the phone, is watching the game, and is relaying information. Hey, Messi just scored. It's 2-2. Hey, they're going to overtime. You understand? Like my soccer league, nobody ever talked about the MLS before this. And now they're watching U.S. Open Cup. You guys, it's another world. Like this is the biggest thing going on in sports right now in the world. And it's happening in our league.
The great thing is that his body language is he's having a blast. He's loving every minute. And it's funny because the very few games I watched of PSG, his body language was, I don't want to be here.
No, he didn't want to be there.
And it's crazy because, he makes this move and you see it and it's contagious. It's contagious.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Listen, in his press conference last week, guys, just to close on Messi, okay? Twice he spoke about PSG without anybody ever asking him about it. When they asked him how happy he was in Florida, he said, I'm happy, and then he said the complete opposite of what was going on at PSG. And then later on in the press conference, again, the same thing. He mentioned something and he said, I couldn't take it there anymore. I wanted to get out. So, yeah, I mean, it's a world of a difference. You're happy,
In ending, guys, Nick, do you think John Herdman is going to be the next coach of Toronto FC?
So, I guess through certain people that I've spoken to, I think it's safe to say that he's been interviewed. Could he be the next one? Probably. I think that right now, when you talk about names and successes, and, I think that he's still a good candidate because of everything that's gone on with him in Canada. So, good for him if he does decide to take it. It's still, to me, it's still questionable.
Would you take it if you were him? A World Cup 3 years away. Having said that, we know what the budget restraints are for Canada. Chances are they're not going to have too many preparation games or camps. The less you have, the less chance of success you're going to have 3 years from now, very unfortunately. So you either stay in the context that is, with the odds against your team having success because there's not a lot of money there to play with, or you leave, you go to Toronto where chances are they're going to say, write the amount on the check. What would you do?
I don't know him well enough to understand, what drives him. What I've seen in terms of pride and what drives him is success for sure. What drives him too is that, I think he's a proud man that, he feels this World Cup was wetting your feet, and maybe the next World Cup now being at home as well can probably get better performances. On the other hand, it's only normal too. Coach wants to coach every day, and being in professional sports with a club, coaching every day is a completely different beast, and that's the beauty of it too. So again, I don't know him personal enough to get into his head, but whatever decision he makes, I think it's a pretty good one, because I think even if he would decide with TFC, he's smart enough to understand, what's going on there right now. And, knowing him to a certain extent, he'd make sure that all the cards are on the table, and everything will be in the right conditions for him to succeed, because he's not going to go into a situation where he's handcuffed.
Nick,
Okay, guys.
Jeremy?
Yeah, okay. So listen, a lot of things to say right here. He's got to pick his poison here. Does he want to continue working for a rotten Canadian federation that has no money, that's broke, that keeps giving him all kinds of problems? We know that he's angry, he's upset, he's pissed off at the situation right now. But he's got a Copa America at the tip of his nose there, where Canada's already almost certainly qualified in. Then there's the World Cup that's going to be coming up in 3 years after that. Those are
We lost Jeremy. Oh, we got him back. Jeremy, we don't hear you. Jeremy.
Yeah.
We hear you now.
Yeah, okay. So for Toronto FC, nothing is guaranteed. With the national team, they have Copa America almost confirmed, and they have the World Cup in 3 years. I don't think John Herdman is the man of the situation. Not if they're going to keep Bernardeschi on the team and they're going to keep Insigne. I don't think he has what it takes to be able to keep these guys in line and make them function. Don't forget that in Portland, they just got rid of Gio Savarese. I had a chance today to speak to Miles Joseph, the assistant coach in Portland. They're devastated down there. Don't forget that Savarese in Portland went to 2 MLS Cup finals. In the 6 years he was there, he won MLS's back. He's extremely respected. If I was Toronto, I would look towards Savarese. That's just my philosophy, my opinion. I think he would be a better candidate. Or you go get somebody in Europe that can coach these guys. And then after that, my question is, what happens to Morrow? Does Morrow join him in Toronto if Herdman goes? Or does he take over with Canada because they don't want to spend any money and they know that they have Morrow there that they can count on? I don't know. But
So we all agree that the 2 Italian players making the money that they have and the contracts that they have, they will be difficult to move because it will be difficult for another team to take them on. Correct?
Well, Bologna tried and they were not able.
If that's the case, and you need someone that they can relate to, you talked about Italian coaches. I think, you know what? There's a couple that you would think Alessandro Nesta should be interviewed. No?
Yes.
Gennaro Gattuso should be interviewed. I'm not saying to hire one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Nick, would you have any names of other Italian coaches that you think would be willing to experience the MLS?
Well, I'm saying there's a lot of different names. Like going back to Herdman, for me, I wouldn't be worried about him being able to handle Bernardeschi and Insigne, because first and foremost, John's a strategist. John is very good at getting you on board. Look what he's done. Look what he's done with the national team and all those players that he uncovered all over the world, and making them buy into something that, they created together. And I think for me, that's not the worry. It's more the fact of, with a salary cap, with constraints, how do you fix the team around Bernardeschi and Insigne? That's the big question. Because watching them the other night, I couldn't believe the 2 center backs, and Mabika and O'Neill. Like, that's embarrassing. It's embarrassing, guys. And this is why, sometimes people look at this level and go, are you kidding me? And that's what's more, I guess, for me, that's the biggest problem. It's getting Insigne and Bernardeschi in the right frame of mind. Bernardeschi scored 2 goals the other night, and he's playing probably at 30%. Insigne came in and made the difference.
Yes, he did.
In 20 minutes, he changed the game around.
Yeah.
So those aren't the problems. I think that putting them in the best conditions, giving them that responsibility of they need to be the difference makers, which they can be, but all of a sudden now putting a team around them.
Listen, guys, if they
fielders, and whether it's a forward, with all due respect, the forward they brought in, the Owusu, again, for me, that's the biggest problem.
Yeah, guys, the middle of the park for Toronto.
Yeah,
they need a good striker. They need a good midfielder who could take Bradley's spot, and they need 2 good center backs. If they do that,
they have Toronto. The club have all the resources to do that, and if they get the right people in place to build that, they can get back to. And again, I think that even though they're going through this difficult, atrocious moment, they're not going to back away from saying, what do we need to do to get back to where we were at, And that's, I guess, enticing for a Herdman or for anybody going in there, is that they will put you in the best conditions to succeed.
Nick DeSantis, thank you very much. Jeremy Filosa, thank you very much. CF Montreal next up on Saturday night as they host the New England Revolution, with or without Gustavo Bo, Jeremy. Do you know? I think he went to Argentina.
Bo and Gil are both doubtful for Saturday. So
wow, that's a huge break for CF Montreal.
Yeah, well, it's not confirmed, but they're at least questionable. Yeah,
that would be a huge break. Guys, thanks so much. We'll talk to you again next week. All right. Thanks for watching us all. We watch this on YouTube, of course. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's absolutely free. And follow us on Twitter at SickPodCFMTL. I'm Marinaro. It is the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal Talk. Ciao for now.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal Talk on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.